Hello! My name is Lucifer, and today I'm going to be giving a little quick explanation on the lore for my character. This is going to be a part of a multi-part series where I focus on each character individually and the different, storylines and universes, and it's kind of confusing, but this episode itself will be talking about the overarching universe that holds all the different storylines. Something I would like to give a quick disclaimer about, because I have been really stressing over how to really explain this. But one detail in the story is that most of the people who have superpowers are autistic. This is not meant to be like, oh, autistic people aren't human, or oh, autistic people are better than allistic people. It's more of a metaphor for escapism and hyperfixations. I'll get more into it later, but just want to start this off by saying, this is not meant to make autistic or allistic people feel any worse or better. This is simply just a story element that I added as an autistic person to kind of express how it feels to have a heavy hyperfixation or little world that you've created in your head. It's also meant as a way for the main character to feel like they can relate to other characters that they meet. I feel like I worded that weirdly, but just saying it isn't meant to be rude towards any sort of group. It's honestly just me projecting my autism into my storyline and kind of having it as an element. Now that that's over with, time to actually explain the story itself. So, in this universe, which is honestly basically just like our universe, except with a little bit of changes and altercations, but it's honestly pretty much Earth. With the exception being, since pretty much the beginning of time, some people have been able to access little, worlds inside their head through forms of art, like singing, painting, writing, even programming. Anything that you can use to create a story, you are able to create some sort of dimension out of it. Even you know how little kids sometimes have a stuffed animal that they're like, oh yeah, this thing is real, this thing is literally a real person named Bob and he likes the color blue and waffles. That stuffed animal could become a portal to another dimension where you can actually meet Bob, who likes waffles, and you can have a little waffle date with him. However, you have to really, really badly hyperfixate on this thing to actually be able to access this world. The world has to feel real before it becomes real. You can't just make up a random storyline in your head and be like, man, this is my character, and his name is Tim, and I'm gonna make a portal through this guitar, and then boom, Tim is there. No, you gotta be really obsessed with it, to the point where you cannot breathe, you cannot eat without thinking about this thing. Which, makes it so that a lot of the people who are actually able to create these little pocket dimensions are neurodivergent or on the spectrum, going through really rough stuff at home, to the point where they have to escape through it in a fictional world. So that means that 99% of the people who have these powers are not okay or just autistic. It is extremely, extremely rare for perfectly mentally okay people to have the ability to do that. Meaning, most of the time, whenever the people who have this power try to bring it up to other people, they're just like, okay, yeah, I think you're crazy, I think you're seeing things, or hearing things, or I think you're not okay. Which again is not supposed to be a reflection of real life, because this may sound crazy to hear, but back whenever I was in the witchcraft community, there was kind of a thing that a lot of people would talk about, where they would be like, I think that people with schizophrenia or hallucinations are just people who have magical powers and can see into a different world, which, really, really kind of wholesome sentiment, I guess, but as someone who has experienced delusions, I do not think that it was just my intuition telling me that my gotcha characters were gonna come to life to kill me. I think I should have seen a therapist instead. And kind of encouraging the sentiment that, oh, well, it is real, that stuff is real, y'all are just seeing what we don't see. No, that's not really a healthy thing to spread. Back to the actual story though. So, a lot of people who have these sort of magical powers are just I think that I should stop telling people this because it's just gonna keep on turning up bad. Because, after constantly being told by literally everyone in your life that oh, well, that's not good, you shouldn't do that, I think that you're just crazy, you're gonna start being maybe that's not the best idea to share my super cool magical powers to everyone I just met. So, it's not very mainstream. A lot of the people who have this ability kind of just keep it to themselves, and then sometimes they'll meet somebody else like them and they're like, holy moly, macaroni, this is wacky, this is crazy. It is noticed by people from an outside perspective that something's kind of up with them, but it's not really usually oh wow, this person acts kind of funky, I think they have superpowers. Usually it's just people kind of clock that person as autistic, and usually the people who have the superpowers are autistic. So usually they're just noticing autistic traits and they're like, yep, this person's wacky, this person's weird. So a lot of the people who have these superpowers they keep on going further and further into their own minds because they don't really have anyone from the outside world to reach out to. And that's how a lot of people actually develop their powers, because they don't have anyone to talk to. So they kind of just create this mini world inside their head where they can have friends, they can have like a good family if they're going through stuff at home, they can have like a super cool buffet and become a magical girl and like beat up monsters to like cope with like their everyday life. Which, the first one about the no friends thing, that's actually the major focus inside the main storyline and the character that we focus on, but we're not going to talk about it today. We're going to talk about that in the next episode. And honestly, it's not even like all autistic people have the superpower, because like I said, it's mostly represented in the story through autistic people, but that's because I'm autistic, and that's just how I tend to write a lot of my characters. I'm not really good at writing characters who don't have autism, because, you know, I can't really relate to it. But there are a lot of autistic people in this world who, like, they don't really have that much creativity, or they don't really hyperfixate on things that badly, so they won't have it. They have to, like, really, really hyperfixate on something to have this power. That's why a lot of holistic people don't have it. There's also some people who see glimpses of it, or they feel it, but they're like, I don't want to see more weird, so I'm just gonna shove that back down, so they never end up actually developing this universe. And it can even die as they get older. Like, eventually they could just stop running, they could just stop having creativity, and they'll be like, oh no, my world has gone away, that sure does suck. Sometimes you don't even want it to go away, and it'll go away. It just kind of passes along, and you have to deal with it. Similar to that, not every single, like, person who escapes into this world, it's not always healthy for them. Some people could go crazy from it, some people could like want to stay in the world and never come out. It can affect their everyday life, it can make them like even more other than others, because people are like, okay, you never go to school and you never go to your job and you just live in your house and we never see you at all, so I think that you are just a weirdo, a freak, a weirdo. And then they'll never actually get to meet people like them because they don't reach out to anybody, and they'll never know what's wrong with them, so they kind of just stay in their house for the rest of their life, just traveling back and forth through this universe until eventually they die sad and alone, and none of the people in that universe are even technically real. So it can be a very, very depressing life for some of them.